Hello, and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin English, founder of The Silver Edge. Our mission at The Silver Edge is to inspire men and women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond to live their strongest, healthiest, most fulfilling lives. In today's episode, we talk with Rudy Kadlub. Rudy is 71 years old and was very active and quite strong as a young man. But see if you can relate to this. In his 30s, he got married, had kids, and was spending long hours in his booming real estate business. And every January, he made a New Year's resolution to get back into shape. And every year, he dutifully hit the gym for a month or so until life got in the way. And this went on for decades. The pursuit of being healthy or getting back in shape just wasn't enough motivation to stay on track with his resolutions. All that changed in his mid-50s when a skiing accident landed him in physical therapy. The routine of being in a gym for a few days a week awoke the passion for training he knew as a young man, and he was getting stronger every week. On a whim, he decided to see what the state record was for the bench press in his age group. It didn't seem outrageous, and he decided then and there to go for it. He found a passion for powerlifting and went on to set dozens of state, national, and world powerlifting records. And he's still at it today. Join us this week as Rudy shares his knowledge and passion for healthy aging. We'll hear what his workout routines look like, how he prioritizes recovery, and how he manages to stay motivated to put in the hard work that it takes to become and remain a world record powerlifter. And now, on to today's show. Hello, my guest today is Rudy Kadlub. Rudy is the CEO and co-owner of Kaubki Strength, whose mission is to make the world a better place through strength. And Rudy knows a thing or two about being strong. He began powerlifting at age 55, and now at age 71, he is a powerlifting world record holder in 3 different weight classes. Rudy, welcome to the show.
Good to be here, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. My pleasure. I'm excited to talk to you about your strength journey here. And I definitely want to talk to you about your powerlifting career and your thoughts on staying strong as we age. But let's back up a little bit and start at the beginning. What were you like as a kid? Were you an active boy?
I was. I had I was raised as an only child, and I had 2 other cousins that were only children as well. So we hung out a lot on weekends, and made up our outdoor games, and from roller skating and back then hula hoop and all kinds of crazy stuff that we try to get good at and have competitions. So we were always outside. We loved baseball and throwing the ball around and pretending we were, in the World Series. We were pretty active as kids. I'm talking first grade through 3rd grade, 4th grade, somewhere in there. I grew up in Southern California, so that was great because we could be outdoors, all year round.
Yeah, year round. And so sounds like I think that's pretty common for folks, especially the kind of the over 50 crowd, right? We grew up in this sort of, you go outside and play and that's just what you do. So a lot of us were pretty active there. We didn't have the distractions that the kids today have. So moving in then towards your school years, did you get involved in sports? Did you stay active going into junior and high school?
Yeah, I did. I went to a Catholic high school, boys' high school, as a freshman and played football there. But after that first year of being, and I guess probably going through puberty, I realized that spending another 3 years in an all-boys school was not really what I was looking forward to. So I convinced my parents at and it took some work on my part to convince them to let me go to the public school, co-ed, and I did so. And so as a sophomore, I played football at the public school, and then in the spring, I injured my foot in a goofing around on a little motorcycle, and broke my foot, and so I missed the spring sports. The next year, played football junior and senior years. And then when it came around to baseball in the spring, the coach there said, well, you didn't play last year, so, I want you to go out for track. Oh, I didn't play because I was hurt. That's, and I'll never forget that guy. He's gone now, but his name was Coach Horst, Horst. And he horsed me around and wouldn't let me play baseball, which was a sport I really loved. So I ended up going out in the spring and playing, running track, and which I wasn't very fast. So I ran sort of a middle distance thing, which is always a gut check, the 440 or the 880 in particular. And then I fooled around with throwing the shot put, which was my first experience with any kind of a strength sport as all. And we started lifting weights in high school. But back then, we really didn't have a weight room. We had what was called a universal gym, and it was about a 5-station machine with cables and pulleys mostly that was just sat in the middle of our locker room. That's all the room it needed. And we took our turns on that, but there was no real education for weight training back then. But I did play varsity football, and then went on to college, and chose a university where I thought I was going to get the best education, and had a chance to play football. I was diminutive, if you will, as a senior, particularly for my position. I was playing center on the offensive line, but I was 5'9.5" and weighed 155 pounds or so. And it wasn't until I got to college where, and even my freshman year in college, I was probably 165 pounds or so. But I did win a position on the freshman football team and was able to play that year and be a starter, and then went on and played 3 years on the varsity. But it was between my freshman and sophomore years that I started lifting weights in the summertime to try to get stronger and bigger. And I actually, when I went home in the summer, went to a gym in Pasadena. I lived in Alhambra, which is just near Pasadena. And I went to a gym there that was owned by a fellow by the name of Bill Pearl. Now, for some of you youngsters, you might not remember who Bill Pearl is, but he was the Mr. 7-time Mr. Olympia bodybuilder. He was the big thing before Arnold Schwarzenegger, and really a great guy, and took me under his wing and during those summer months, and taught me a little bit about weight training and how to program and such. And so that was the most weight training experience I had gotten to that point. Because even in college, we didn't have a strength coach back in those days. It was just the position coaches going in there and making sure you're doing something, pushing some weights. Yeah, so that's kind of the introduction to sports. I went on beyond that after graduating from UC Davis, where I played football, and went on, coached high school for 1 year. My high school coach, when I was in high school, had taken a new job at a high school down at the beach in San Clemente in Southern California. And his name was Allie Schaff, and Allie knew I was coming out of college with a teaching credential and such, and he apparently thought well of me enough to hire me as an assistant football coach. There's an interesting story beyond that. If we have time, we can go into that. But they didn't have a position in the boys' PE department, so I ended up being in the girls' PE department. That was my teaching job, and then coached football after school. From there, I went on and coached 8 years at the college level before switching careers and entering the business world when I was about 29 or 30, and went into the real estate business. So from there, Kevin, the strength journey sort of ended because I got involved in a career, had kids and raising a family, and Lord knows I had 5 children, and which took up a lot of time, and had to obviously work long hours to make enough money to afford that many kids. So there wasn't a lot of conditioning and training and or time to get into the gym or almost do anything for yourself. And I think people can relate to that. Those are your most productive time of your life as far as career is concerned. and rearing kids. So there's not a lot of time for personal advancement, if you will. So I, like most other people in that age, you set New Year's resolutions, and okay, I'm going to start this January. So that would last, until maybe mid-February, where the next most important meeting or whatever got in the way of a workout session, and then something else happened, and your wife called you home early for a dinner with friends or whatever, and then everything else falls away. So by the middle of March, you're back to your old routine of not going to the gym, and so that was kind of my repeat, every year for maybe 30 some years.
I think you're absolutely right that, especially my audience here, right, the folks over 50 are going to relate very well to that story. I think, a lot of us were very active at one point, and to your point, you kind of get in those really productive years. Many of us are married, having kids. That's when your career's moving, and it's hats off to the people that keep up their fitness through that. But for a lot of us, we don't, right? There's, like, to your point, there's other things that take priority. So it sounds like you got introduced, you were always active, always athletic, but really got introduced to the barbell, not so much by a strength and conditioning coach. You didn't have one, right? And that college football team back in those days, but by Bill Pearl, a professional bodybuilder who probably would have showed you a lot of the, kind of the classic barbell strength and conditioning type things. Maybe talk to you a little bit about eating enough to build muscle. Did you build a bigger frame back then? I think you mentioned you were 5'9", 5'10", and 160 something pounds. Did you manage to put on size with this guy?
I did, and what's interesting, and I'm not ashamed to share this with you, because back in those days, we didn't know as much about performance-enhancing drugs as people do today. And there was talk back then about anabolic steroids. And it was just something that was sort of a new thing that was coming on into popularity, wasn't banned by any professional or organization or federation, by the NCAA. It was just out there. People didn't know enough about it. And I went during the summer between my sophomore and junior year in college, I went to our family doctor in Southern California and just said, "Hey, I really need to get bigger and stronger to be able to compete as a junior and senior at the college level. Can you advise me from a nutrition standpoint or anything else that could help me?" So he prescribed for me a little blue pill called Dianabol. And I started taking this pill during that summer. And I had a job with the city parks department that year, being a park director, literally being a glorified babysitter for people that send their kids to the park, and I'd entertain them with games, etc. But what was interesting, it was at the park that I was assigned to was the green space at my old high school. And at that point, there was a fellow there that was hired by the school, and it's kind of a janitorial position. He was an African-American fellow that had been an Olympic hurdler and had played tight end for the LA Rams. His name was Dwayne Allen. And so Dwayne was there, every day, doing his job, but I would interact with him, and he, being a pro football player, he sort of took me under his wing and guided me a little bit. He would work out with me. We'd run wind sprints and such, and lift weights and together on this little universal machine that was still in the locker room in the high school that I had attended 3 years prior. And so he helped me, and I was getting bigger and stronger and faster. And I was just thinking it was due to the, just working hard. But this little blue pill that I was taking was having its effect on me. And that fall, when went back, it's actually late summer, went back for 2 days, and they do all the pre-testing to see where you are, do wind sprints, 40-yard dash things. And I was running with the wide receivers and running the same speed as they were. And it was like, what in the heck? I mean, I surprised myself. And I came back and half the people didn't recognize me because my shoulders and arms and legs had all gotten much bigger and stronger. And, I realized that it was this little blue pill that I had taken. Just to finish up that story, so you don't think that I'm a lifelong drug user, but at that, I continued through that season, had a great season. Then I remember being in the weight room there at the university, which was, again, we're still in an era where weightlifting is not a big deal. The room was the size of maybe a 2-car garage, and this is for the entire athletic program of a university. But one of my teammates was in there, and he had a muscle shirt on, and he had this patch of hair, maybe a size of a 50-cent piece, with a tuft of hair growing out of it. And I said, Mike, what in the world is that? He says, I don't know. Ever since I started taking Dianabol, he was on it too. He said, this weird stuff started happening to me. And I go, okay, that's it. I am not having that happen to me. So my experience with anabolic steroids was, about a 6-month venture. And after that, I did. Then you start hearing more and more about it, and athletes were abusing it. Some of your listeners will remember the name Lyle Alzado, who was a defensive lineman for the Denver Broncos, and he was a known abuser of Dianabol, and a guy that was probably 6 foot tall, maybe, but got up to 275 and was just very, very aggressive. He ultimately passed as a result of his drug use, but it was Lyle Alzado who, and his experience with it, that sounded the alarm for everyone. And then it was then that the NFL and other professional organizations and the NCAA started looking at that and banning it and beginning testing for that. So it works, but it is dangerous and scary. And I think being all natural is a much safer situation for everyone.
Yeah, and to your point, now most sports are testing, and we have even in bodybuilding, there's the natural division where there's mandatory testing, et cetera, and we'll come back to the natural competition here, I'm sure, in just a bit. So that's interesting. So obviously, the answer to the question is you put on some size is absolutely yes. It sounds like you got bigger, faster, stronger.
Yeah, probably 30 pounds. I didn't mention, but it was probably 30 pounds. So
30 pounds? Okay, so it was significant.
190. Yeah, I was 195 when I came back that junior year. It was like, okay, well, that's different.
Right. And I'm guessing that was primarily muscle mass in that 30 pounds. Yeah. Okay. Yep. All right. So then you go on, you make a shift in career. You've been doing the teaching thing. You get into, I think you said real estate, more of a business venture. And we know that I know that you got a couple of other business ventures going these days. Where does strength start to come back into your life? I'm guessing maybe as your kids are getting older, or when does kind of creep back into your life, the importance of strength training?
Well, I guess through the years, the motivation to get into the weight room was, tying it to health, for example, was not enough motivation for me to consistently go to the gym. Like I said, I would set new goals, New Year's resolutions almost every year, like everyone does. And you get fired up. You've been eating all the rich food and drink during December and the holidays. I got to get over this. I got to get back in the gym. And so you do that. You start going. And but it was the pursuit of just health was not enough for me to consistently stay there and keep driving myself to go to the gym. Like I said, I get distracted by business or family or whatever. But it wasn't until I was 55 or 54 or so, and I was up skiing with the family and was going through a mogul field, lost it, went down, landed on my shoulder, came up groggy and hurt. And I didn't break anything, but surely felt like it was out of alignment or something. And so I got back home, and the pains didn't really subside. It was a couple weeks or so, 3 weeks. I finally went to my family doctor, and he said to me, well, he took x-rays. He said, well, you've got some bursitis in there. You're just getting old. It's just something you're going to have to put up with. Well, I responded with, screw you, doc.
Yeah.
Do not use that word with me. I am not. And, I still feel young. I ski hard. I was an athlete. You are not going to take this away from me. So he sent me to a physical therapist who had an office in a nearby gym. And so I was going to the physical therapist to work on my shoulder. It was kind of an AC joint issue. And I got in the habit of going into the gym because like I said, I was going there for 2 days a week for physical therapy. And following the physical therapy sessions, I'd go downstairs to the gym and push some weight around. And after 3 or 4 months going in there 2 days a week and lifting weights, the shoulder was getting better and I was getting stronger. And I developed this habit of going to the gym. So that was in the spring, early summer, and through the end of that year, I consistently was in the gym for 6-7 months or so. And I remember sitting around on New Year's Eve again, thinking about New Year's resolutions. And this time, I said, I wonder what the bench press record is for Oregon. And I assumed, and this was the early days also of the internet, so I got my laptop out and I started searching for bench press records in Oregon. And I didn't know what I was going to see, but sure enough, it popped up and there's a list of things, and it was by age and weight. So I found my age group and looked at what the record was, and I thought to myself, I could do that. I could do that with a little more training. So I went to the gym that I'd been where the physical therapist was and where I'd been training that week, the next day, and told one of the trainers there, I said, my goal for this year, my New Year's resolution is to set the Oregon bench press record. He said, well, okay, if you're going to do that, you got to squat and deadlift too. I go, well, what is it? Let's go do it. So he got me over and we started working on it, and I could barely squat with one plate on the bar, 135 pounds. I couldn't do it without my heels coming off the ground. My form was terrible. I kind of knew how to bench press. I thought that was everyone, everyone bench presses. It's like, that's the age old deal. How much you bench, that's
what do you bench? Yeah.
That's a measure. That's the measure of man, right? But this other stuff, the squat and the deadlift, which were the other two lifts that make up the sport of powerlifting, were new to me, really. So I was then 55, I think. And we started working in January of that year. As now, through my career, I had become a substantial real estate developer and developing large-scale master plan communities here in Oregon. So we were doing some business down in Southern California, in the Sacramento area. My company was looking at developing projects along the new light rail system in Sacramento. So I was commuting back and forth there, and I found a gym that I would go to there and train in. And it turns out that they hosted powerlifting meets there occasionally. And so there was a powerlifting meet in November of that year scheduled, and I had a business meeting scheduled that week there. So I signed up for a powerlifting meet. And I had never been to a powerlifting meet or seen one before, so I wasn't sure what to expect. But I showed up this Saturday morning and paid my dues and fees and all that, and went in, and I'm in a pair of gym shorts and a t-shirt, and tennis shoes. I didn't have any equipment, didn't have a weightlifting belt or anything like that. But I remember when they called my name and said, the bar's ready. And so I started walking up there, and this other competitor pulled my shirt back. He goes, "Where are you going?" I go, and they would call my name. He said, "You can't go up there in that." I go, "What do you mean?" He said, "You can't wear gym shorts and a t-shirt. You have to have a singlet so they can determine the depth of your squat. You can't have loose fitting clothes." So he turns around and digs to the bottom of his gym bag and pulls out this crusty green singlet. And he goes, "Here, throw this on." And I go, "Oh, okay, I'll do it." And, so I threw that thing on, and I went up and I did the squat. And then in the sport of powerlifting, it always starts with the squat. That's the first lift of the day. And you have 3 attempts, and you can't ever go down in weight. So if you miss your opening weight, you can't say, "Well, give me less than that." You either have to get that or go up. But at any rate, that's how that works. And I was successful in doing a squat. I can't remember the numbers right now. It was over 300 pounds, I think. And then the bench press, likewise, you get 3 attempts. And then the deadlift is always the last lift of the day, and 3 attempts of that. So you get 9 attempts for the day. So I think I went 9 for 9 that day. It means I got all 9 of the attempts I did. And it turns out I set all 4 California state powerlifting records for my age and weight. The 4th one being the total of all 3 lifts combined. And I thought, geez, this might be something that, can motivate me beyond just health to keep going to the gym. And so buoyed by that initial success, I came home and started working that trainer and redoubled my efforts, and went back in April of the following year and broke all 4 of those records again. And then about 6 months later, came back to Oregon and actually set the Oregon bench press record that I had set out to do, and set some state records for Oregon. And then within a year or 2, I was to a point where I was actually setting national records. And then in, I don't know, maybe 4 years later, set my first world record. And it's been nonstop ever since, except for a pause in 2016 where I had shoulder surgery on both shoulders to correct. I had developed osteoporosis in both shoulders from not really understanding and really being coached well enough or using the proper tools. And I think if you stay at this sport, if you lift weights long enough and you're not using the right movement patterns or the right equipment, in particular, just using a straight bar, eventually you're going to wear your shoulders out. And I did. And as you recall, how I started on the journey was a result of a shoulder injury from skiing. So I was already a little bit hampered there. So in 2016, or let me back up 2 or 3 years, because it was more like 2012 or so that I was really feeling the pain in my shoulders with every workout, and went to my orthopedic surgeon here and had the x-rays and said, "Yeah, you've got arthritis and, you're wearing out." And he said, the answer is to do a shoulder replacement. But if you do that, you're not going to be able to lift weights anymore. So I go, "Well, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to keep going until I can't go anymore." And ultimately I was kind of almost bone on bone and very painful, hard to sleep at night, couldn't roll over. It was really tough. Like every year I go back to the guy and say, "God, there's got to be something we can do besides just giving up on the sport." And eventually he said, "There's a doctor now at the Cleveland Clinic who's come up with a new procedure that is short of total shoulder replacement. It's called hemicap surgery. And essentially what that is instead of cutting off the acetabulum of the humerus, in driving a titanium rod with a titanium ball onto your humerus, What they do is just shave off the top of the ball and then literally glue and screw a half dome. Think about a lacrosse ball cut in half made of titanium. Screw that onto the top of the bone, and then they inlay Teflon in the glenoid process of the scapula. And that, I was told, is a lot less invasive, and you can continue on with an active life. You can do MMA, contact sports, weightlifting. I said, well, if that's the case, that's what I want to do. So I ended up going back to the Cleveland Clinic and meeting with Dr. Anthony Miniacci. He looked at my X-rays and MRIs and said, yeah, I think you're a candidate. We can do this. And so that was that was 4 years ago that we did that. I did both shoulders in the same year. You can't do it at the same time. I wouldn't advise that, but 6 months apart. And I think May, I did the right shoulder. In October, I did the left shoulder, and then came back and started rehabilitating, rehabbing, and working then and rehabbing with tools that are my new company that I co-founded with my partner, Kaubki Strength. We had developed and still are creating biomechanically sound weightlifting equipment that puts the joints in a more centrated position, in a natural movement position. So I was using our tools that we had developed in rehabbing that. I was back on the weightlifting, powerlifting platform by May of the next year, May of 2017.
And that second shoulder was in the October before, right? Just to get that timeline straight. Yeah. Wow, that's impressive. Yeah. Okay.
And then since then, continue to improve. And I noted the other day that in the meets since then, 6 of the 7 competitions that I've participated in, I've won the Best Lifter Award, which is kind of based on a handicap of age and weight and how much you lift and your body weight. And so so it's been good. I've set dozens of world records since having both shoulders repaired.
That's incredible. So a Best Lifter Award that looks at all the lifters across all the weight and age ranges. Is that correct? Yeah, that's something else. And are you still competing today?
I competed just last month at the North American Championships in San Diego. Won Best Lifter.
There you go. Okay.
Set 4 new world records in my weight class. I actually moved up a weight class because last year in the fall at the World Championships in Limerick, Ireland, I set the world records in the 90 kilogram weight class, which is 198 pounds. And then at the Nationals this past year, which were in September, Labor Day, I set all the world records in the 100 kilogram weight class, which is 220. And so at the North American Championships last month, I went up a weight class to the 242 pound weight class, or 110 kilos. I didn't increase my weight that much. I just moved to, I weighed in at 221 pounds, which is 1 pound over the lower weight class to get into the upper weight class. So that was setting forward that records there. So I have all 4 world records at the 90, 100, and 110 kilo weight classes now.
That is very impressive to move across weight classes like that and to hold those records. That's an incredible story. So I want to back up and talk a little bit about just your training regimen, and then maybe talk a little bit about nutrition as well. But let's start with the training. What does a typical week look like for you in terms of training to compete at this level?
Well, I have to give hats off to my coach. At Kaubki Strength, besides manufacture barbells, we do coaching and education. And if your listeners were interested in looking at that on our website at kaubkistrength.com, they can easily see the coaching that's available to them. We have thousands of hours of how-to videos and corrective videos and such that are available for a lot of it for free and the rest of it very reasonably priced. But my coach, who's our head coach of our education, Brandon Sin, he's aware that in my mature age, that it takes a little bit longer to recover from a workout than it would be for a 20-something. And so he closely monitors my training and provides me with a training program every week. He looks at what I did in the prior week and adjusts the training and exercise regimen for the following week. But in a typical week, Kevin, a Monday is there's always one of the big three lifts that are the center of that training day. So on Monday, we bench press. And Wednesday is my deadlift day. And Wednesday is my deadlift day. And Saturday is my squat day. And then on Fridays, I'll do a lighter session, usually a second bench day. So I only squat one day a week. I only deadlift one day a week. I only bench heavy one day a week. And surrounding those 3 days, or within those 3 days of those big lifts, are supplemental exercises designed to use to stabilize the joint, create more core solidification and such. So, yeah, it's 3.5 days, I would say, a week out of 7.
3.5 days. And you alluded to the recovery, and certainly that's important as we age. It becomes more important as we age, right? To your point, the 20-year-old kid doesn't really think that much and has to worry too much about recovery. But do you have specific strategies for recovery aside from just the keeping it three? You got 3 heavy days, it sounds like, and then 1 lighter day in there. So kind of a 4 out of 7 days working. What are you doing to actively recover?
Well, we have a number of movement exercises that we utilize that you can find on our website. I use a number of natural supplements that are helpful, a lot of fish oil, magnesium, a number of D3, B complex, vitamins and such, and try to eat fairly clean. Although I have to admit that I love dessert, and so I may cheat a bit from time to time, but try to eat a fairly well-rounded diet and stay away from. I don't over drink, for example. I'm not a teetotaler, but I won't allow myself to get sloshed ever. It's that's a detractor of strength, can draw you down. It doesn't help with the recovery for sure. So yeah, it's monitoring and how you feel. And if it's taking long to recover, then you have to go back to your training and say, well, maybe I'm doing too much. And there's a tendency for people to try to do too much, particularly people just starting out. So if any of your listeners are my age and are thinking about, well, I want to get going on training program or a weightlifting program. So many people go in the day one and think they're going to get stronger in 2 sessions, and it doesn't happen. It's really, we say it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And it's taken me, like I said, I started at 55. So I've been at this for 16 years now, 16 years of consistently going in the gym 3 to 4 days a week, and each week trying to build up a little bit more. And we're talking about ounces in some cases. When you start out, if you haven't lifted before, you'll make a lot of gains right out of the chute. But eventually you run into limitations on your technique and leverages and literally what the human body can do. So it gets harder to make those gains as you become, as you get to the upper level of this sport.
And that makes sense. I think a lot of folks are aware that they get those newbie gains, so to speak, where you can add weight to the bar every week, and there's the neurological adaptation as you're kind of learning those movement patterns as well as getting stronger, right? And at some point, unfortunately, that's not linear and doesn't last forever. And then to your point, that's when having a really good coach and some advanced programming strategies really comes in. So yeah, and I agree that I think a lot of people, and we live in an instant gratification society, and people are expecting results right away. And for something like building strength, that's just not how it works. We had mentioned earlier that you had made New Year's resolutions, hit the gym, and then by February faded out. I think anybody who's been a member of especially like a Globo gym for any amount of time is very aware of that phenomenon, right? In January, it's packed out, but don't worry, because in February, it'll be just back to where it was before. And part of that is that life gets in the way and people don't, they're not serious and they're not committed. The other part, I think, is that people they get in there and they're frustrated. In 3 weeks and all they are is sore and tired, and maybe they wanted to drop weight, or maybe they want to get stronger, and those things haven't happened in 2 to 3 weeks, and they get discouraged and they kind of fall off that. And, if they'd hang on for another couple months, I think they might see that this is, to your point, it's a marathon. It's certainly not a sprint.
Yeah, and it's a good point, Kevin. It's important if you're starting out to have a trainer and to have one that really has, I'd check his resume and see if he's worked with people mature age. You notice I don't ever use the O word. I won't let that in our vocabulary.
Right. Yeah.
But make sure that trainer has experience and doesn't kill you in the first 2 or 3 sessions, because it'll just discourage you, and then you'll run out of there with your tail between your legs and say that's go take up some other sport that's doesn't create so much pain.
Yeah. Another question I wanted to ask you is around kind of in the same topic, is it's motivation. And I know that motivation can be a pretty fickle thing, right? If anybody's been at any sport or endeavor for long enough knows that motivation is not enough to, it gets you going, but it doesn't keep you going. But what keeps you motivated? What keeps you going? I mean, let's face it, this is hard work. You're grinding hard in order to compete at this level. What makes you do that? What keeps you going?
Well, a couple of that's an excellent question, and you have to be somewhat introspective to answer that. And I think, as I said, the competition, the idea that I could compete and win, and whether it's just a blue ribbon or a medal or some recognition, for me that's a driver. I love to win. I've always wanted to be a winner. I've always tried to be the best that I could be in whatever I've done. And in fact, in the real estate development business, I've been named National Developer of the Year twice in my career. And so I've always wanted to be the best that I could be. And that comes from an upbringing of, having a father who whatever I did, it was never good enough. And so, I'd come home and say, "Hey, Dad, I was elected junior class president." He said, "Well, good. I expect that of you." Or, "Dad, I'm student body president." He said, "Well, of course, you're a Kadlub. That's what you're supposed to do." "Hey, Dad, I'm captain of the football team." "Of course, that's the way it's what, it's like, what do you mean? Of course, you should pat me on the back and tell me I'm doing a great job. But it was never quite enough. And so my whole life I've been saddled with that burden of not being good enough and having to do whatever. If I won a state record, set a state record, that wasn't good enough. I got to set an American record. Then I got to set a world record. Now I got to set a world record in 3 different weight classes. Like, where's this end?
Right.
But so the motivation for me, a lot of it comes from that recognition of success and being the best that I could be, and as it turns out, maybe the best in the world. So that's one thing. Again, not so much for health, but I am my motivation to continue on is reinforced by the results that I see. I feel healthy. I get a lot of compliments from people. Recently, last summer, we did did one of those body composition deals where they scan your body and such. But the impressive part about that was, again, I'm not a bodybuilder, so I didn't have, like 6% body fat or anything like that. I'm kind of normal in that range. But what surprised me was my bone density. And this is a very important topic for people that age. Because if you aren't active, if you aren't using resistance training of some sort, you will start to lose strength in your bones. You hear how many times you hear people falling and breaking their hip and they never recover. Well, turns out that weight training strengthens your skeletal system as much as it does your muscular system. Now, these two systems work together. That's why it's called the musculoskeletal system. They work together, but it takes a lot longer to increase the strength of bones than it does increase the strength of muscle. Muscle, soft tissue, it's easy to tear down and builds back up. The same way, though, when you stress the bone, and the bone is stressed when you're providing resistance training to it, it also breaks down, if you will, micro fractures, and then reheals. Well, the results of my bone density was such that the measurements for a 60 plus person at 2 standard deviations from the mean, which is like 95% of people fall in that category, was like 2.2 when whatever the measurement was. My density was 5.5. That's probably 4 standard deviations from the mean. There may not be another person alive that at my age that has that sort of density. And it shocked me. I go, holy crap, that is a benefit that I hadn't really thought about, but I have extremely strong bones. And it's a result. I can't definitively say that it's a result of weight training because I didn't measure myself when I was 52 before I started training. So I kind of doubt that I had that kind of strong bones prior to. I firmly believe it's a result of 16 years of consistently training. So that is a new motivator for me. And I'm saying to myself, if this is the kind of results I'm going to get, why would I ever stop doing this? I'm going to keep doing this as long as I can, not just for setting records, but now I'm excited about maybe continuing to be healthy and maybe getting a message out there to other people that as you get older, you don't have to be the prototypical aged person with being bent over and have a hump on your back and not be able to move around and not be able to bend over and pick up your grandkids or bend over and pick up the newspaper on the driveway and not throw out your back. There's a world ahead of you. I mean, I've got, and I'm not bragging, I'm just sharing with your listeners is that, post 2 shoulder surgeries, still getting after it and training and at a world-class level, it's still possible to do that. It's still possible to achieve things you never imagined you achieve if you set some goals and start off slow and take it. Again, it's never too late to start. I started when I was 55, but I tell somebody who's 71 that where I am today, it's not too late to start if you start with a good trainer and have good coaching and move along, take it a little bit at a time.
That is very well said. And I agree 100%. It was Mark Ripito that famously said, stronger people are harder to kill. And to your point, a lot of listeners may miss this, that certainly resistance training increases muscular strength, which is a good thing as we age. It's critical, in fact. But a lot of people may miss that it also increases bone density and bone strength, to your point. And a lot of older people the end is that fall, right? That they never can recover from. It's that broken hip. This is a pretty classic scenario played out. And through resistance training, we can push this off. And I love the fact that you mentioned that you are an ambassador for that healthy aging, right? You can say, look at myself as an example, because the narrative that we're being fed or that we see more often, kind of the archetype of that older Western person is that more decrepit look. It's that person that's obese or has metabolic derangement, is in a nursing home, has a walker, like you said, is hunched over. But there's a lot of people out there that, I think maybe that paradigm's shifting a little bit, but there are a lot of people out there that are active and healthy. And it makes us question, I think a lot of us just assume that aging is what happens as we get old and it's inevitable. And certainly to some degree that's true. We all will meet the same end. But a lot of aging is in our hands, right? To your point, if you're healthy and you're active and you're working to increase, putting money in your physical 401k, your body's 401k, so to speak, right? You're investing in yourself. You can certainly have a different outcome as you age. And I applaud you. You've obviously wired that up. You're a great example of that as a multiple world record holder in strength sports. So hats off. That was very well said. Thank you for sharing that. So Rudy, as we're wrapping up here, what's next for you? I mean, you've you kind of alluded to it a little bit. You've done a lot. I don't know of any intergalactic powerlifting championships that you can win, but what's next for you? What do you see coming up next year?
Well, I'll continue to powerlift. I mean, the competitions have been reduced, and it's difficult in 2020. I mean, normally I would do three competitions a year. This past year it's tough to do that, and the nationals, which were scheduled for June originally, those got canceled and moved till September and such. So not right now for next year. The only thing that's on the calendar would be the national championships in July. So I've got quite a few months to get ready for that. I'll continue to pursue competing at the national and world level. The world championships were canceled this year. They were supposed to be in Germany, and we're looking at possibly the world championships being in Germany this year. But until we see what's going to happen with COVID and such, that's not on my calendar. But I'll continue to train, and I find motivation in working with, as you can imagine, at Kaubki Strength, being CEO, I am the senior person there in terms of age. Most of our employees are in their 20s and 30s, and coincidentally, even though they might work in welding or engineering or someone, almost all of them, you'll find them at the end of the day in the lab. We call our gym the lab, where we test our equipment. You'll find them in the lab training, and I enjoy being around the young people, and that part of that is my motivation, because that keeps me young, keeps my vocabulary young, keeps me familiar with what's going on in the latest music genres, etc. As we work out and train. But I'm also motivated to try to share with people like your listeners the opportunity to continue to improve. Life is a continuous improvement. And if you aren't improving, then why are you still here? I mean, let's face it. Let's don't go backwards. Let's always try to go forwards and get better. And I might also mention, I was going to throw that in there when we were talking earlier, just about, you mentioned obesity, and it's frightening how poorly people eat in America, and how they not only eat poorly, but exercise less and less, and put themselves in a very unhealthy position by being overweight. The one thing about weight training that I didn't mention, it's important to understand, is that muscle burns more calories at rest than fat does. And so if you are more muscular and you create more muscle, it's going to be easier to stay leaner just by sitting around. You're going to burn more calories than someone who is less strong or has less muscle density.
Yeah, 100%. There are so many good things happen as you increase strength and increase muscle mass in your body. And certainly that's a huge component in weight loss as well. Well, Rudy, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
You can just send me an email, rudy@kaubukistrength.com. You can go to our website, kaubukistrength.com. I'm on Instagram as Rudy Kadlub, Facebook as Rudy Kadlub. There's only one Rudy Kadlub in the world that I'm aware of. So you can reach me that way. Yeah. If people are interested, I may not get back to you right away, but I almost always get back to people that particularly might be interested in the hemicap surgery or such, or my experience with that. I'm happy to chat with people about it.
Okay, great. And I'll drop all of that into the show notes so people can find you there. And for people who are interested in maybe some of your coaching services, you guys, I'm assuming every personal trainer and coach in the world is now doing online work, whether they were before or not, they are now, right? Is that available to folks? Can they reach out to you for those types of services as well?
Yeah, I don't do coaching myself. We have an entire coaching staff that does that. But again, at kaubukistrength.com/education, you can see all of our educational services, and they're available to people worldwide. We're training people on 5 different continents right now.
Fantastic. Well, Rudy, thanks again so much for coming on to the show. You are a fantastic ambassador for healthy aging, and I wish you all the best in all of your future endeavors.
Great. Thanks very much, Kevin. Appreciate it. It's a pleasure being with you and pleasure chatting with you.
Well, that's our show for today, folks. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends and please consider subscribing and giving us a 5-star review. All the show notes and much more are available at our website at silver-edge.com. That's silver-edge.com. So until next time, stay strong.